Hey, here we are with Unit 3. That means we are almost at the end. There's a light right out there somewhere at the end of the tunnel. We can almost see it. Hang on. All right. So Unit 3 is media analysis, and I think you should by now once we work into this, you'll just kind of see where my mind's at in these ways. But what are you learning? Again, we're working on that academic and business tone and voice and grammar mechanics. So we look smart. We learn those rules like a pro, break them like artists. Basics of APA documentation. So at this point, we're moving from MLA to APA format and documentation. And of course, this is the same thing as the literary one. Where are you going to use this? In for college and in your profession for those same reasons, right? Anytime you need to read between the lines. So this is about developing those critical skills even more deeply. And then adding in that documentation and complicating that thinking. So you're going to have to dig deeper with this one. I mean, this one is the one that drains your brain a little more, and that's good because your brain is. I know you've heard it before. I've heard it a gazillion times. Your brain is a muscle. It really is, and you have to work it out. Dig deeper. Our assignments are very much similar to the literary one in that we will have some practice. So with the practice one, you're just gonna give it a try, give it your best. Again, it's on the discussion forum, so everybody's sharing. So proofread, think through it, be logical, um, and but again, you do it thoughtfully. It's good. It's cake grade. There you go. 100, 100, 100. Okay. We'll have three different pre-writings this time. So again, those are the same thing. You do those, do them thoughtfully, and they really, are step by step through this process. Trust that process, and then it'll lead you into the essay itself. The better you do these pre-writings, and the thing is this essay does kind of slam up against the end. So really focus on these pre-writings. The better you do these pre-writings, the more you're going to have of this essay done overall once you're done with them. Again, I'm not grading your grammar in them. I'm not grading, spelling or anything like that. So just let the ideas flow because you've got to get what's in your head and what's your heart on that page before you can decide and make it sound good and all that kind of stuff. Okay. The only thing you'll be turning into me at the draft stage is the essay itself. Okay, you've done your business letter, format letter. You did the first cover letter. I gave you feedback on those. At this point, look back at those. If I've said twice something about format, I shouldn't have to knock points off of it again, right? If you're not sure, ask me, right? Look back at those right now and ask me, and that way I can help you out because that's always my goal. I want to help you out. But at this point, you're on your own with that writing center, of course. Definitely, they're there for you. Um, and of course, each other, you can contact each other in class and give each other feedback, read each other's work and give some feedback. The more you do that with anybody else, the better you are at analyzing your own writing. And learning to read your own writing is one of the goals. Yeah, I know you can read your writing. I read mine too. But to read it like a reader, right? Like I read it and it sounds great. Oh my God. Everything you've read that's written by me, I don't have any idea why you wouldn't understand it 100% perfectly. It made perfect sense in my head. It sounded wonderful. That's how we all think, right? We hear it in our head and it's great, right? It's getting to the point, can we read our writing and kind of hear it from somebody else so that we go, oh, that part might not make sense. That might not be clear. And that's a true art. I mean, I think there's some kind of that's like learn the rules like a pro, break them like an artist. I also think there's some sort of magic. So there's science to writing. There are rules. There's artistry to writing. There is beauty in it. But I also think there's some kind of magic of getting into somebody else's head and saying, okay, how would they hear that? And that's what we're working on, of thinking about, how do I write and say, okay, yeah, there's somebody on the other side of the page, you know, how do I read it like them? And imagining every time you read, no, there's a person on the other side of that page who wrote it. How'd they do that? How'd they do? Good, bad, in between, whatever. So you're turning in a draft, and again, I will turn around feedback to you pretty quickly, and then you'll be turning in your final cover letter and your essay. So Let's take a look here. Again, media analysis. We've got everything under the Unit 3 stuff, except for the quizzes. And then the essay. Now, this is kind of one of my favorites because I'm a nerd, all right? So there's the assignment, and we've got the introduction. Make sure you get part 1 and part 2 of the media analysis. It's in 2 parts because I ended up changing something, and it's a little long. I thought you could do part 1 and then take a break, part 2. So even though I changed some things, I didn't merge it into one video again. And then, of course, there's the pre-writings, and if you want to just look at the slideshow, the PDFs, these 2 pre-writings, you're just doing writing, and this one, there's a form. And then below on this page is, and I know that most students for the other units don't really refer to the website a lot, but this one does have a lot of extra stuff. So technical, right? One of the things you have to do with this essay is we're doing media analysis, so we're analyzing an advertisement, which you get to choose. Um, choose wisely, my friend. And we'll be reading, so you'll want to, as we're reading what you can kind of how to analyze and what to analyze, you want to make sure and pick something where it's like, oh, I could see some of that stuff in it. So you have things to write about. So don't just pick an ad because you like the ad, right? Pick one that there's stuff you could actually write about. But the other thing you have to do is you have to use at least 2 of our readings, or any of the ones that are marked with an asterisk, and they're marked here and on the schedule. You have to use at least 2 of those quotes from at least 2 of those in your paper. So in your paper, you're going to have 3 sources at least. You might have more if you do more than one ad, okay? And that's why you do the introduction, okay? Because I'll explain all that there. But you need to make sure that you're doing that. And so you can find those here. So there's this stuff, of course, we're doing APA here. So there's readings on our key concepts and how to. So there's a bunch of these. We're not reading all of them. I don't have all of these on the schedule, though it may seem like it, okay? And it might have most of them. Discussion and analysis. So these are articles that provide examples. And you can see these have the asterisks. If it's got the asterisk by it, then you can quote from it for your essay, okay? And then there's a lot of these because I just like collect them. Like I'll read something and I'll be like, oh, dude, that would be great. And no, you're not reading all of these, so not even near it. But you can see, I mean, if you want to come over here and check this out and, you see something, you're like, you know what, that sounds interesting, and you read it and you find a quote you like, then cool, you can use that. And as far as those quotes go, you're probably not going to find a quote that directly relates to the ad you're analyzing. In fact, you shouldn't even look for that, because the point is you're analyzing that ad as an example of a bigger issue, right? So what you want to think about is, one, quotes from where they're saying, where the writers are talking about, oh, advertisers do this kind of thing to like manipulate us, or they appeal to our emotions in this way. So that's a lot of the kind of how do we analyze articles. If you read something like that and you're like, hey, I think I'm going to do this ad, and yeah, I see that same thing in there, make a note of that because you'll want to quote that. Because then you can quote it and say, okay, so-and-so says, the Project for Media Literacy says, blah, 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 blah. Advertisers do this. If we look at this ad, and then you pull up the one you're going to analyze, we can see that happening here, and then you explain it. It gives you, here's what you write your essay about, right? If you read something that you're like, that is BS, and I'm calling it, man, that is the perfect thing to quote. What happens when you read something you don't agree with? Doesn't your mind go, oh my gosh, no way, and let me tell you why. And what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And what about that, right? I mean, we're starting to list them off. Boom. What do you need to do? You need to get words in a paper. You're thinking words, right? So you can totally, in a paper, anytime you need to use sources, quoting something you don't agree with is great because you can say so-and-so says this. However, if we look at it from another perspective, we can see boom, 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 and then you go explain how you see it. Right? So as we read the readings, it's really important. Don't leave that as a kind of last step. It's really important that you think about, when you come to something that you're like, oh my gosh, I see that in ads all the time. Make a note. Write down which reading it came from. You saw how many readings I have on there. and we've got a ton on the schedule. We're not reading like even a quarter of what I've got, but we've still got a ton on the schedule. So make notes. What I'm saying is make notes as you do this essay. Um, so there's more. I mean, you know, all sorts. I do have a YouTube media analysis playlist when I come across interesting ads or, where videos where people are doing analysis. I do that. And then student samples. So we're reading quite a few, but again, remember how powerful it is to look at those samples. And I've got a bunch of those, and you can see this stops at L, and then that goes to women. So I skipped a bunch in there. Um, and then with APA, the seventh edition does not require you to have an abstract, but if you have a teacher, so if you have a teacher who's still doing seventh edition, I showed you that in the format unit introduction, on the format page that below there I had the sixth edition. If they want you to still use that sixth edition and they say, I want you to have an abstract with it, and you're like, okay, I've read about this stuff, because even when you read about it on the web, it's all kind of vague. I mean, if they give you a sample, follow their sample. But you can look at these samples, because I've got 4 or 5 that do. 7 is like, just don't even worry about students doing abstracts anymore. Great, one less thing for us all to worry about. I love it. 6 definitely wanted an abstract. So it just gives you a sample. I didn't want to not put them on the web just because it's really good to have samples of those. And then there's media literacy, advertising awareness organizations, publications, just because, again, I kind of collect it all. So that's pretty much where we're going with the media analysis. It is deep thinking. If your head doesn't start hurting, you're not doing it right. Once you find your ad, or you have a couple in mind, show them to your friends, your family. Say, okay, what do you think about this? Tell them, kind of sum up what you've read. Say, okay, well, we're studying this and that, and talk it over, because the more you share with people, you talk through ideas with this kind of stuff, with critical analysis, things like that, deep thinking, the more you're working through and figuring out what you do think about it. Okay? And I have one more thematic suggestion. Everything bad is good for you. This is how today's popular culture is actually making us smarter. Yay. So Steve Johnson. So it's nonfiction. So I love to read nonfiction too. I am such a nerd. But how can one resist everything bad is good for you? I mean, dude, let's have cake for breakfast, right? That's not bad, man. That is good for you. I don't know if I've told you anywhere before, but adulting is, when we were kids, we thought, oh my God, I'm going to grow up and I can do whatever I want. I'm going to be an adult. Yay. It didn't work out that way, did it? You grow up and you realize being an adult is doing a lot of stuff you don't want to do. You can, however, eat cake for breakfast, so eat cake for breakfast. See, everything bad is good for you. Doesn't that make life better? All right, there we go. That's how we roll. Breathe deeply. Let me know if you have questions as we go along, and take care of yourselves.